Tonight, vaccination concerns.
I just sort of assumed that I was protected.
As new cases of measles emerge, a message from doctors to adults who aren't sure they got a booster shot.
Why federal politicians were watching today's Ontario budget so closely. Plus, at issue, looks at next week's Alberta election.
It's conspiracy to commit journalism.
And after 7 years holed up in an embassy in London, Julian Assange is one step closer to facing the U.S. justice system. Why the founder of WikiLeaks is as controversial as ever. This is The National. His arrest may be as polarizing as his work, but tonight, Julian Assange is in custody. Still a hero to some and still a villain to others. Two very different views of the man who leaked secrets. Remember, WikiLeaks published many of the stolen emails that damaged Hillary Clinton's run for president in 2016. But it really became a household name when it released this video in 2010. It shows the U.S. military gunning down a group of men in Iraq, among them journalists. It was a side of the Iraq War the U.S. public hadn't seen. Assange got that video and other documents from a U.S. Army analyst, Chelsea Manning. And that is why the U.S. is asking for his extradition. The charge, conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, hacking, to allegedly help Manning get at the information. But that was almost 10 years ago. Renee Filipponi explains why police moved in today.
Dragged by police out of the embassy where he's lived for nearly 7 years, Julian Assange's face shows the passage of time. He isn't giving up without a fight.
Since 2010, we've warned that Julian Assange would face prosecution and extradition to the
Outside the courthouse, his lawyers say the U.S. extradition request and indictment unsealed today proves they were right. Assange is accused of helping former U.S. intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning crack into a Defense Department computer, giving her access to hundreds of thousands of confidential documents.
This pertains to publishing work 9 years ago. Publishing of documents, of videos of the killing of innocent civilians, exposure of war crimes. This is journalism.
As WikiLeaks stands under threat.
In 2012, the Australian activist sought refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy on a completely unrelated case. He had been accused of sexual assault in Sweden. That case has been dropped. In recent years, he stayed to avoid what happened today. In a video posted online, the recently elected Ecuadorian president, Lenin Moreno, says his country had reached its limit, saying Assange had leaked personal information about the president and repeatedly breached security protocol.
He's a hero, not a criminal.
Peter Tatchell is a human rights campaigner and a friend of Assange and calls this an injustice.
He skipped bail, has to answer that charge, but beyond that, there is no reason why the British government should be acting hand in glove with the US administration to prosecute someone who told the truth.
The British government disagrees.
Well, what we've shown today is that no one is above the law. Julian Assange is no hero. He is hidden from the truth for years and years. And it is right that his future should be decided in the British judicial system.
Assange remains in custody in London for breaching bail, while his lawyers prepare a defense for the more serious charge coming from the U.S. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
Now, while Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy, his alleged co-conspirator, Chelsea Manning, was convicted and jailed for her role. She was sentenced to 35 years and served 7 before being released 2 years ago. But last month, she was jailed again, this time for refusing to testify to a grand jury investigating WikiLeaks. She's still behind bars and could be held until she talks or the grand jury finishes its work. Meanwhile, Julian Assange could face up to 5 years in prison if he's convicted in the U.S., but some worry he might then also be charged for releasing those Democratic emails in 2016, the ones that candidate Trump seemed to ask for. So, what was President Trump saying today? Keith Bogue starts there.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
During the 2016 election campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly extolled the leaker of the Democrats' secrets and reveled in the damage he believed WikiLeaks would do to Hillary Clinton's campaign.
This WikiLeaks is like a treasure trove.
It's a different story now that Julian Assange is under arrest and facing a criminal conspiracy charge for the theft of official U.S. secrets.
Do you still love WikiLeaks?
I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing. I know nothing really about them. I don't really have any opinion.
Trump's longtime friend and advisor Roger Stone has boasted that he kept the Trump campaign in direct touch with Assange. He faces criminal charges for trying to cover up his contacts with WikiLeaks.
He became a willing player with the Russians.
Democrats are hoping an Assange extradition means they'll get some answers about what was going on between Russia, WikiLeaks, and the Trump campaign.
I think it's very good for us to finally get him on U.S. soil. So we can investigate, we can basically cross-examine, we can find out the facts that only he knows, and his connections, and how he basically distributed his information.
WikiLeaks believes that's the whole game, that the charge today is an attempt to get Assange extradited to the U.S. on one crime and then force him to testify or be prosecuted on other things.
There is no assurance that there will not be additional charges when he is on U.S. soil.
But that's not how the law works.
Whatever the U.S. requests Assange to be extradited on, whatever charges, that is all he can be prosecuted on once he's here.
And if that's the case, then it means the U.S. will have to lay out all the charges it wants to prosecute against Assange as part of its application for extradition. Andrew?
So, Keith, it seems clear there's been an evolution in the way Trump perceives Assange, but there was a time when Americans were really divided. I mean, was he a whistleblowing journalist or a threat to U.S. national security? Is that still the case?
Well, not to the extent it was. And that's because of what we've learned with the passage of time. Assange really does seem to focus more on exposing U.S. secrets than those of other countries, such as Russia or China. And in the 2016 election, he seemed clearly to be a Russian tool in the dissemination of the Clinton campaign emails. He even had his own show on Russian state television for a while, and all of that has largely obliterated the reputation he was cultivating.
Okay, Keith Bogan, Washington. Thanks very much. Thank you. And there was another big international story today. Ian, you've been watching that one.
Andrew, one of the world's longest-serving leaders, has been toppled in a military coup. Omar al-Bashir was president of Sudan for nearly 30 years. Protesters took to the streets for months demanding he resign, and they're happy now that he's gone. But as the CBC's Margaret Evans tells us, their fight for change is not over.
The scenes on the streets of Khartoum today were initially those of celebration, a taste of what freedom might feel like, and all recorded for posterity on a mobile phone. News that Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir had been ousted was delivered by his old ally, the defense minister, Lieutenant General Ahmed Awad bin Auf. I announced the toppling of the regime, he's saying, and the detaining of its chief in a secure place. Those not already on the streets rushed outside to celebrate. To see al-Bashir stepping down is enough for us, says this woman. Oh, our young people, this is such a joy. But perhaps a short-lived one. Many Sudanese, say analysts, see the general as a mirror of the man he just deposed.
He's someone who, as a political leader as much as an army leader, is part of the deep state in Sudan. He is part of the network that President Bashir has built up over the last 30 years to insulate his government.
There are many on the streets crying foul, calling the coup a charade designed to save al-Bashir, not oust him. Fadia Halaf is a protester reached by the CBC today.
We're going to carry on protesting. We do not want to recycle the same regime over and over again. That's impossible.
Al-Bashir himself came to power in a military coup in 1989, enduring for decades despite being accused of genocide in Darfur in the 2000s by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The protests leading to his apparent downfall today began in December over the price of bread. The civil society groups that have led them are now calling on people to stay on the streets, to keep protesting until they win a civilian transition to democracy. The protests will go on, says this man, until the Sudanese people are assured their revolution will not be stolen from them. Much now will depend on how the army reacts if the people do stay on the streets. The battle for Sudan's future still unfolding. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
According to Statistics Canada, more than 10,000 people from Sudan live in this country. We spoke to a couple of them whose stories explain why what's happening there hits very close to home.
I left Sudan in July of the year 2000. I was 12 years old when I left.
I left Sudan in 2003. I forced to leave the country because I get threat. If you're not leaving, your life it will be in danger.
The terror that I remember most was a day when I was watching TV with my dad, and then we heard a knock on the door, and it was people from the security forces, and they'd come to confiscate my dad's truck. And that was the day that they ordered him to shut down his business. And hearing that knock on the door was a terrifying moment.
I'm a leader in the student union when I was in the university. I get arrested there. I'm been there for 2 weeks. Tortures. I get beaten with the sticks, and also they take us all the clothes, only with the underwear, and then they start putting they put the cigarettes pads in our body, and I still have in my skin I have the torture in my skin. I still have the mark.
I saw my dad's anger at just how repressive the regime was.
It's a very bad time in my life.
So there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of hope that the people who are protesting are able to affect change, but there's also kind of like this moment of confusion of what was this all for if it's just going to be a military dictatorship for the next 2 years.
Bashir is gone. Yes, we are happy. We're not only calling for a person. This is the state. This is a country. This is our life, our people's life, and the change will happen, and will happen soon.
With so much uncertainty in Sudan right now, Global Affairs Canada is warning people to stay away. It says the security situation could deteriorate quickly and is advising against all travel. The Canadian Embassy in Khartoum has also been closed until further notice.
Doug Ford's government has unveiled its first budget since winning a majority last spring, and Ontario's premier will not keep his campaign's pledge to balance the books during his first mandate. The Tories pegged the current deficit at $11.7 billion, and they don't expect to eliminate the red ink for at least 4 more years. The budget offers measures aimed at broad appeal, a plan to create 30,000 new childcare spaces over the next 5 years, free dental care for low-income seniors, allowing alcohol to be served as early as 9 a.m., and the government wants to make auto insurance more affordable while redesigning license plates to the color blue. With all this spending comes spending cuts. The Environment Ministry's budget has been slashed by more than a third, and Indigenous Affairs will see almost half of its funding disappear. Now, this budget could have implications for federal politicians who will soon be duking it out in a national election campaign. Katie Simpson has been poring over the document and explains why it should matter to Canadians everywhere.
It's called Protecting What Matters Most, a provincial budget that is as much fiscal blueprint as it is political argument. And what Doug Ford's government may actually be protecting is his federal Conservative colleagues heading into an election campaign.
There is a long and difficult road ahead, but our determination is absolute. We will return Ontario to a balanced budget on the schedule that we are setting out here today.
This was expected to be a slash and burn budget, but it isn't. Instead, there are gradual cuts and spending freezes, but there's also a new childcare tax credit and new investments in hospitals.
We have developed a reasonable path to balance. You've heard me say it, so I'll say it here today. The Goldilocks approach. It can't happen too quickly. It can't take too long. It has to be just right.
This may provide Andrew Scheer's Conservatives some political cover. The federal Conservatives badly want to repeat the success of the PC party in Ontario. If they can do what Ford did last year and win a majority of seats in the province and also pick up seats in Quebec and Atlantic Canada, party insiders see a clear path to a majority Conservative government. So satisfied voters in Ontario significantly help Scheer. The lack of deep cuts may make criticism more complicated for the Liberals, though the budget does take aim at the Trudeau government's priorities.
Indigenous affairs cut by close to 50%, cuts to the fighting forest fires by 67%, cuts to housing are about 30%. Those are big cuts. What they're not telling you is who's getting hurt, and that's wrong.
The Prime Minister is banking on voter remorse while challenging the Conservative movement. Justin Trudeau has lumped all prominent Conservatives together, Ford, Scheer, and the frontrunner to become Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, in the hopes that missteps at any level hurt his direct opponent. Ford is clearly trying to hurt Trudeau's government in this budget. There are 73 different references to the federal carbon tax, and nearly all highlight how the province cancelled its cap-and-trade program.
It's a tax with the word carbon in front of it. It does nothing for the environment, absolutely nothing. So it's just another tax grab from the federal government.
This foreshadows the fight that will dominate the fall election.
My first act as Prime Minister will be to scrap Justin Trudeau's carbon tax.
They've seen that the first thing they'll do, if elected, is to make pollution free again.
Both leaders look comfortable waging this battle from their very different positions, which will be tested over the next 6 months. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, the Ford government says it'll also come up with a strategy to tackle the province's debt, currently pegged at $343 billion. That's the highest in Canada. The Premier and the Finance Minister say they'll give up 10% of their salaries if they fail to report on how that debt reduction is going annually.
Here's some other stories we're following tonight. We're learning more about the woman stabbed to death in Toronto's underground path system last night.
Everybody always said that she was a ray of sunshine. Very, very happy person.
Police believe the 51-year-old woman was specifically targeted. Witnesses say her screams could be heard echoing through the underground walkway. Homicide detectives are looking for a male suspect believed to be in his 20s.
To dig all my winter stuff out, boots, everything again. I put them all away. I thought we were done.
Much of the central U.S. engulfed in blizzard warnings as the second major storm in less than a month continues to hit the region. Daily snowfall records have been broken in many cities, and wind gusts in excess of 160 kilometers an hour have been recorded. And for travelers, as you could imagine, there have been lots of challenges.
If convicted of the 36 crimes alleged in the indictment, Mr. Avenatti would face a statutory maximum sentence of 333 years in federal prison.
A U.S. federal grand jury has indicted celebrity attorney Michael Avenatti on 36 counts, including embezzlement, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The Trump critic, who represented Stormy Daniels, is alleged to have stolen millions from his clients. Avenatti tweeted saying he plans to fight all of the charges.
And still ahead on The National, the women who say a nurse drugged them into early labor.
And it's at issue night, and with the Alberta election right around the corner, the gang has plenty to talk about.
And think you've been vaccinated against the measles? If you were born in a certain time period, you may need a boost.
I don't know. I mean, my kids are vaccinated. That's definitely on my radar, but for myself, I just sort of assumed that I was protected.
Next, to those of you who might want to head in for a checkup.
A couple of swallies and a good scoff. In Newfoundland, it means having a couple of drinks and a really good meal. If you're from another part of Canada, though, you might not know that, unless you had a copy of the new Newfoundland Dictionary. As Barbara Yaffe reports, it's a helpful and a loving guide to Canada's most colorful English.
Steve, you tooth like come with your ass. Doesn't think wine the side of day, you.
Newfoundland English. It's a variety of dialects. Sometimes a delight and a dilemma. Fun to listen to, but hard to understand. Now there's help. The Dictionary of Newfoundland English. These English professors have spent the past 20 years gathering old Newfoundland words for their dictionary. They researched books and magazines and stories and songs. There are thousands of entries in the dictionary. Entries like nunny fudger. A good many Newfoundlanders might know what a nunny fudger is. It's a ninny. But who else would? George Story says there's a reason why Newfoundland speech is just a little different.
You've got comparatively few changes in the makeup of the Newfoundland people. The ethnic stock or origin of 98% of Newfoundlanders is Irish and West Country English, which means a high degree of homogeneity.
George Earle reminds Newfoundlanders of their verbal heritage through his stories and poems.
So when a youth goes o'er Brudge to cross a mish to reach a rudge, he might be slinging for a spurt, or seeking franklin, trout, or hurt, or traipsing through a drug of vars. He perhaps is looking for his arse.
3,000 Newfoundland dictionaries were unloaded here recently, and even at $45 a copy, it looks like they'll be going fast.
The response by the public has been nothing short of fantastic. It's the best thing since John Cabot, and we have sold in advance 65% of the 3,000.
If you want to buy a dictionary and are living outside the province, you may have a tough time finding one. Very few copies went to the other provinces. Apparently, the publisher had a hard time convincing booksellers on the mainland that anyone would want to buy a dictionary of Newfoundland English.
Here's a snapshot from a measles outbreak.
I just feel sad for the people exposed.
One man who was infected flew from San Francisco to Long Beach, California, and back. That's all it took to spread fear among countless people that they could be next.
Guess I'll know in a few days if there's a problem.
You could have been sitting even within next to them or within 5 feet, I think would be enough for that exposure.
In the U.S., there are hundreds of cases. In Canada, more than 24 and growing.
When we talk about the importance of having our children vaccinated, we have to make sure that Canadians are aware that the information that we're giving to them is based on scientific information.
The government budgets $5 million a year to educate parents on immunizing their kids. And it's not just children who need vaccinations. If you're from a certain generation, you may have less protection than you think and less than you need. Cass Rusi tells us who's at risk.
Today, most physicians vaccinate.
When vaccines for measles were first introduced in the 1970s, a single dose in childhood was considered protection for life. At least that was the thinking back then.
As it turned out, that was good enough for about 85% of people, but about 15% of people would have a wearing off of the vaccine, and then they would become susceptible to getting the measles.
Meaning some people born between 1970 and the mid-90s could be unknowingly under-vaccinated today.
Those people may be walking around out there and they may be susceptible to measles and not realize it.
Some of them, she realized, were her own patients.
It looks like about a quarter of our practices may be made up of that cohort of people. It's a large group of people.
It could also be the case for other childhood infections like whooping cough or chicken pox. That's why a second shot, a booster for measles, became standard practice in the 90s. A surprise to many today.
I mean, my kids are vaccinated. That's definitely on my radar, but for myself, I just sort of assumed that I was protected. So now I'm going to go check.
Anthony Acab, born in 1975, didn't even know he needed a booster shot.
I'm assuming that it would be too late for the vaccination, or it's still possible.
A simple blood test can check your measles immunity.
The easiest
And the safest and effective thing to do is just to be vaccinated. That's a very practical way of managing the uncertainty about immunization records.
Especially if you're traveling to places where measles might be circulating. Cass Rusi, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead on the National, my favorite day. The last few days of campaigning are underway in Alberta, so how's it all going down? At Issue is here.
And later, our moment. Tonight is senior prom in Sudbury, Ontario, but we're not talking about high school seniors.
I had so much fun yesterday finding my aqua and polka dot dress.
I think they really just enjoy a night for themselves. I think they were pretty excited because some of them showed up at 4 o'clock.
June of last year, 90 pressmen go on strike. They're the people who print the paper. The other workers are laid off, and they collect unemployment insurance. While they're laid off, their contracts expire too, and they form a common front with the pressmen. Here, management made its first and biggest mistake. It took a tough bargaining position on feather bedding, hoping to cut down on the number of pressmen. All later mistakes simply compounded this mistake. It was based on the illusion the Star could withstand a long strike. Art Wood became publisher later. During the strike, he was managing editor and a member of the bargaining team.
When the strike first began, there was a feeling, I think, that if we could get better concessions and better press manning operations in our press room in this newspaper, that it eventually would help the industry as a whole, that we could be the breakthrough, and it may reflect on the kind of press manning clause that would be granted elsewhere.
I'm not sure whether they were out to bust the unions or not. I know they were out to play very hard in negotiation and dig their feet in.
The Star was fighting against demands already conceded by La Presse, and in fact, it was trying to take back rights already won by the pressmen in previous contracts. The pressmen refused absolutely to give back what they already had. Management wouldn't move, and for almost 3 months, there were no negotiations. But the pressmen were working elsewhere. They weren't suffering from the strike, so they couldn't be beaten. In September, management finally backed down, and the talks went forward. But in such a hostile atmosphere, they took much longer than necessary.
Do you think if the company had handled the negotiations differently, you could have saved a couple of months or half of that strike? I think the company should have moved a little bit earlier than it did from some of the hardline positions it had taken. And I think we could have saved some time. Yes, we could have.
Is this the man responsible for the long strike? He's William Goodson, then publisher of the paper. FP Publications, the chain that owned the Star, says he was given complete freedom in the negotiations. Goodson has said his decisions were approved from above. This is an old interview with Goodson. He was not available this week for an interview. On February 6th, the last contract was approved. The strike had taken 8 months, and the reporters were eager to get back.
Can you go back to work as one big family now? Oh, I think so. I think we'll be anxious to get back there and clobber the Gazette.
On February 12th, the presses rolled again, and management was confident too. As it turned out, overconfident.
We're going to go out and regain our circulation, advertising, and our editorial position in the city. In other words, we will become the #1 English language newspaper again.
The second mistake was made immediately. Advertising rates were kept at pre-strike levels, always much higher than the Gazette's. Except now, the Star didn't have the circulation to justify the rates.
Well, I think obviously it's turned out that it was a mistake. It's turned out that it turned off some of our advertisers who felt that they were paying for something they weren't getting. They're paying the cost per thousand, which is on which an advertising advantage rate is based, was obviously too high for what we were able to deliver for them.
It appears the Star felt that all it had to do was open its doors and the advertisers would come back. They didn't, and in the end it was the lack of advertisers that killed the paper. The same overconfidence led to the next mistake, a bad advertising campaign. A campaign that reflected the paper's high opinion of itself.
You can switch back now. The Montreal Star. Best news in months.
Meanwhile, the Gazette was running a clever series of ads that seemed to have the whole city singing.
I
I think Mr. Kenney has misjudged Alberta. It's in times like these when Albertans pull together and we stand up for one another. We cannot let fear and division win.
We do phase 1 of ending the Trudeau-Notley alliance on April 16th. And then in October, we have an opportunity to end what has been the most anti-Alberta federal government in our modern history.
Just some of the campaign messaging from the two main party leaders in Alberta. Voters head to the polls on Tuesday in that province, but the outcome of the election could really affect all of us. So what will the results mean for Alberta's relationship with Ottawa? At Issue is here to dig into that and more. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Jason Markusoff joins us from Calgary tonight. I'm going to do something crazy and start with Jason tonight just because he's in battleground Calgary. You know, what has struck me through this election, watching it from afar, Jason, is the way that Kenney has tried to set up the Prime Minister as the person that he's fighting, and as though there is this tight alliance between Justin Trudeau and Rachel Notley. How has that been working for him?
Pretty well. He's actually been really careful not to mention Notley by name in most circumstances. He tries to confer some degree of respect on her, and in large part that's because he doesn't want to be seen as woman bashing. But there is one exception to that. Whenever if he mentions her by name, it will be talking about this Notley-Trudeau alliance. He knows that right now in Alberta, one of the meanest things you can say about somebody is tying them to Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is profoundly unpopular in Alberta right now, in a way that Notley is not, in a way that Kenney is not. So tying her to Trudeau, talking about how trying to get along with Trudeau turned out to not get us pipelines, to give us more carbon taxation, to give us some environmental assessment and tanker ban bills that Alberta doesn't want, was a road to ruination. And in fact, it's caused Notley to have to take great pains to distance herself from Trudeau and knock him a bit, trying to show that, yes, she too can be mean to Justin Trudeau.
And I want to talk more about the pipelines and sort of where things might be left after next week. But Andrew, why don't you weigh in on that kind of positioning that Kenney has waged and why he's doing it and whether it's working?
Well, there's a rich tradition of that in Canadian politics. Many a premier has won power by running against Ottawa or by tying their opponents to Ottawa, or generally in politics you try to tie your opponent to whoever is unpopular in that neighborhood. So it's a pretty tried and true tactic. And also it's tapping into a sense in Alberta that they're besieged, they're surrounded, that the federal government is not pulled through for them in the way that they would think right, that they have neighboring provinces and provinces in the Federation that are essentially blockading their main export. And it's not entirely undeserved feeling, but certainly a very strong feeling in the province right now. And obviously that's something you want to tap into if you're running for power.
Is there a danger to that, Chantal?
Well, up to a point, although I'm not sure that you're going to hear many federal Liberals protesting against it, because I fully expect that if they think it's worth it, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals will be using Doug Ford's name in much the same way come next fall. So yes, it's kind of a tradition in Canadian politics. Of course, that's the first part in the case of Jason Kenney of a gamble, and the easy part. That is, I'm going to beat Justin Trudeau by proxy in Alberta. But that second part involves, for all that Alberta has seats, Justin Trudeau won't be unseated by Alberta next fall. It's going to require some cooperation from provinces like BC and Quebec that Jason Kenney has been taking shots at and wants to take shots at as premier. And it is a big gamble in the sense that come October 22nd, after the federal election, the way this is lining up, Alberta will be all in the government federally or all out in opposition.
So where does this leave us now on the issue of the pipeline? I'll start with you, Jason. You know, Jason Kenney has said, I think he would take the caps off the emissions of the oil sands, which you know, is a pretty important part of why the federal government agreed to build the thing. I agree. You know, nothing has happened yet, but it's an important part there. So
and he scraps the the carbon tax as well.
That's right.
He
so
creates
I
a whole bunch of different.
Where would the pipeline be left then if Kenney were to win on Tuesday?
It puts Justin Trudeau in a really tricky place when he's talking about balancing the environment and the economy, as he does every single chance he gets He's talking about what Rachel Notley was doing. Rachel Notley's climate plan was designed in part not just to clean the environment, but also to win over some anti-pipeline opponents. She didn't win them all over, but it does seem that there has been more approval in the country for the Trans Mountain Pipeline under her leadership and with her climate plan. If Kenny takes a lot of that away, which he's promising to do, that becomes harder for Trudeau. That said, if he's serious about this pipeline, if he's serious about making a reconciliation with some of the pro-pipeline First Nations bands, of which there are many, and accommodating the more concerned ones, which he's been doing, it seems like it could be a very risky game if he's going to refuse it just to spite Jason Kenney.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, of course, we're talking as though this is going to happen on Tuesday. Obviously, we don't know what is going to happen. But go ahead, sorry, Chantal.
No, but and imagining that this were to happen. Yeah. A reduction in emissions to meet the Paris Accord target is not just words. It does require emissions to be cut or to not grow as quickly. If you take Alberta out of the equation because its government takes itself out of it, Justin Trudeau is left with a plan that actually is even further from ever reaching those targets that he signed off on. And he has to reconcile two statements that he made. One, that the only reason that he said yes to Trans Mountain was because Alberta had taken all these steps, and two, that the Trans Mountain pipeline was absolutely in the national interest. Yeah. So squaring that circle is not going to be easy with an election down the road less than 6 months away for Justin Trudeau to fight.
Andrew, you weigh in on that and how this is likely to affect the current federal government.
First point is we're probably not going to meet the Paris targets no matter who's in power or what policies we bring in. It's a long way away.
Fair.
But secondly, the broad grand bargain, as I understood it, was supposed to be carbon taxes for pipelines, not pipelines for provincially imposed carbon taxes. So if Alberta revokes its current carbon tax, it seems to me the appropriate step for the federal government is to bring in its own federally imposed carbon tax in the province of Alberta. I don't think there's any necessity for it to back away from the pipeline. I don't think the pipeline should be seen as just simply an incentive for good behavior on the part of the government of Alberta. I thought the reason for the federal government to be making sure that pipelines could get built in this country was in its part of its broader responsibility for the welfare of all parts of the country. So I think it would be, I understand Chantal's point, but I think it would be a hard road to hoe for them to explain we're unhappy with the result of this election, so now we're going to pull out of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I don't think that would play well in Alberta. Obviously, I don't think it would play well in other parts of the country either.
I don't think that the carbon tax is the point. And yes, you're totally right that the federal tax comes in when the provincial tax disappears. I think it's the cap on oil sands emission and the phase out of coal-fired electricity that adds up to less emissions, and that really matter in this equation. And then once you take them out of the play, you might as well say you're not doing this anymore because you are taking out real reductions and you're not putting anything in its place.
Okay, let me pull back. Go ahead, Jason, and then I'm going to pull back a little bit. Yeah.
But if Justin Trudeau's plan to meet the Paris climate target suddenly becomes canceling Trans Mountain, he has a huge problem with Alberta and a huge problem with sentiment out here. I mean, there is already a rising Alberta separatist sentiment out here. If that becomes his decision, cancel Trans Mountain outright because of the Paris climate targets, he has a much larger problem than some climate change issue.
And canceling Trans Mountain doesn't get us anywhere closer to the Paris targets. I mean, it doesn't affect it one way or the other. You can, I take Chantal's point about whether, if you don't want to bring in a high enough carbon tax to make your targets, then you do these other measures, so that's fair good. But the Trans Mountain Pipeline, look, the world's going to be burning fossil fuel for the next several decades. If they're going to be doing it, they might as well burn ours. That's all that the pipeline's about.
I'll just go back to the notion that the Prime Minister has made two statements that he will have a hard time reconciling. One being that he said yes to Trans Mountain because Alberta was doing a lot to cut carbon emissions and meeting Canada's goals or working in that direction, and two, that it was in the national interest to build the pipeline. And those two are hard to fit together. They always were, but they will become very hard to fit together after Alberta pulls out of the climate change framework that the federal government has put in place.
Yeah, if Jason Kenney, there you go. Jason Kenney wins on Tuesday. Things get a lot more complicated for Justin Trudeau. One quick go round. I think you've sort of broadly touched on it, but it is important for all of us to watch this election, and the reasons would be why. Jason, what is the thing that other Canadians should think about as we're watching results roll in on Tuesday?
If Notley comes into power, it's fairly status quo. People will still be frustrated in Alberta, the Conservatives, but it will signal that Alberta agrees on climate change, agrees with her softer approach on pipeline. One interesting thing to watch is how much Justin Trudeau copies some of Notley's playbook. Notley and some of her surrogates have been strip mining the social media accounts and other backgrounds of every single Conservative candidate possible to associate them with white nationalism, homophobia, racism. Some of it warranted, mind you, but to really paint a very sinister picture of Jason Kenney that is a bit over the top, is a bit exaggerative in the campaign context. And if that works for her and helps her win, you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to see Justin Trudeau making that same approach to take out Scheer.
Yeah, it's been pretty ugly. Quickly, Andrew.
I think you're already seeing that, in fact.
Yeah.
If Jason Kenney wins, then you've got a belt of Conservative premiers all the way from Alberta through to New Brunswick. 3-4 years ago, I think there was maybe one Conservative, small C Conservative government in the country. So that's a formidable belt of opposition towards the federal government, particularly on the carbon tax file. But Mr. Kenney in particular has also announced a pretty provocative and confrontational agenda in terms of having a referendum on equalization. As if that could unilaterally change the equalization formula, taking on BC and saying we're going to cut off the oil supply to BC, and of course on the carbon tax file. So we're in for quite fisticuffs at the federal provincial level.
Last word to you, Chantal.
It also, up to a point, is risky for Andrew Scheer, because if you're going to have an Alberta premier that is taking shots at BC and Quebec, and a federal Conservative leader who says, make me Prime Minister, and I'm joined at the hip with that premier, a lot of voters in those two provinces may say, I'm not sure that's what I want.
Although, as our friend Aaron Wary wrote this morning too, it also gives the Prime Minister potential for lots of good enemies as he heads into an election too. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to be out there on Sunday, Jason, so you can, I'll buy you a beer. How about that?
Works for me.
Okay, thanks everybody. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast, for extra content. This week, we're talking about lawsuit threats and the latest in, remember this, the SNC Lavalin affair. 1 week off. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational. As I mentioned, I am Alberta bound. The National will have special coverage of just what is at stake in this election for the province and the country. You heard some of it there. There's certainly anger over the plight of the oil industry. There's an economy that has shed thousands of jobs. And again, as we talked about there, this issue of how to deal with the federal government. I'll be in battleground Calgary starting on Sunday. As Albertans prepare to decide their future, we will have full results right here on the National on Tuesday.
And next on The National tonight, the mother's launching a class action lawsuit against a New Brunswick nurse after allegations she drugged them into labor.
I was put unconscious, right? So it's supposed to be an exciting moment, and that was robbed.
That story just ahead on The National, but first. In case you missed it, if yesterday marked a new era in astronomy with the first image of a black hole, then today may mark the dawn of human genomics in space. NASA has revealed the results of its twins study, showing how a year in orbit changed astronaut Scott Kelly.
And liftoff.
To remind you, Kelly blasted off in March 2015, and for the next 340 days, he was a living, breathing experiment measured and tested to find out what being in space over a long period does to the human body. Meanwhile, back on Earth, his identical twin brother, retired astronaut Mark Kelly, he was undergoing similar tests. So how'd they end up? Well, some changes were obvious right away.
I stretched 1.5 inches, but now as soon as I got back down to Earth, I'm back to my normal 7 feet 6 inches. And my legs are still sore and my feet are sore.
But there were thousands of unseen changes. After a year in space, the artery in Scott's neck, the one that gets blood to the brain, it didn't work as well. His retinas also got thicker, making his vision worse. He even experienced changes to gene activity. Essentially, his immune system was on high alert and stayed that way for months after he got back. So, some pros and cons, mostly cons, but the good news is most of the damage to Scott's body reversed after being back on Earth. So, maybe the next question is, what would happen after an even longer mission to, say, Mars?
I'll tell you about punk rock. Punk rock is a word used by dilettantes and heartless manipulators about music that takes up the energies and the bodies and the hearts and the souls and the time and the minds of young men who give what they have to it and give everything they have to it. And it's a term that's based on contempt. It's a term that's based in fashion, style, elitism, Satanism, and everything that's rotten about rock and roll.
Wait a minute,
I don't know Johnny Rotten, but
yeah.
but I'm sure he puts as much blood and sweat into what he does as Sigmund Freud did.
Johnny Rotten does. What I can't figure is whether you're acting against that label. You don't like the label.
I'm not acting.
No, I know. Reacting against the label then. Responding angrily to the label. You don't like the label. Is that right?
I don't like to hear it come out of someone's mouth.
Okay. Where do you like to hear it come out of? Listen, tell me seriously. I have never seen you perform, but I've read reviews about vomiting on the stage, about sticking pencils in your flesh, about bleeding lips, and about all those things. I want to know the purpose behind that.
The purpose or the reason?
The purpose or the reason?
I vomited. I was ill. I'm not sorry I was ill. Everyone gets ill sometimes, and I was ill one evening, and as I felt that I was going to vomit anyway, I decided I may as well do it with some style. So I did it something like this.
Actually, the Prime Minister of Canada
I've never stuck a pencil in my flesh.
Is that right?
These come mostly from my fingernails.
But you do mutilate and scratch yourself, do you, on the stage? These are innocent questions. I have not seen you perform. I've just read a great deal about you. And I want to know why.
Why? Because what sounds to you like a big load of trashy old noise is, in fact, the brilliant music of a genius, myself. And that music is so powerful that it's quite beyond my control. And when I'm in the grips of it, I don't feel pleasure and I don't feel pain, either physically or emotionally. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. Have you ever felt like that when you couldn't feel anything and you didn't want to either, you know, like that?
Some critics.
Do you understand what I'm saying, sir?
I am trying. You don't have to call me sir.
No, I don't have to.
No.
We're live on The National, tracking some developing stories tonight.
I'm very happy that in his short life, he was able to motivate people.
Thousands gathered in Los Angeles for the memorial service of rapper and community activist Nipsey Hussle. Tickets to the service at Staples Center were free, and all 21,000 were gone within minutes. A procession through the streets of South Los Angeles followed the memorial. The city of Chicago has followed through on its pledge to sue Jussie Smollett to recoup the costs of investigating his complaint that he was attacked. The Empire actor was charged in February with staging the incident and filing a false police report, but those charges were unexpectedly dropped last month. Smollett denies staging it and refused the city's demand to pay more than $130,000 US.
If at first you don't succeed, you try again.
Prime Minister Netanyahu with some encouraging words after an attempted moon landing ended with a crash on the lunar surface today. Israel hoped to become the fourth country to land a spacecraft on the moon, but the privately funded project suffered technical problems as the spacecraft got closer. Only the United States, the Soviet Union, and China have made successful moon landings.
A group of mothers has launched a class action lawsuit in New Brunswick. It comes after a local nurse was accused of secretly dosing women with labor-inducing drugs. Now, she's been fired, her nursing license suspended. Police are investigating, and as Kayla Hounsell tells us, questions about what happened are still swirling.
It was just extremely traumatizing, so my heart goes out to all the other mothers who were affected.
Jade Scott, a new mother, is now the lead plaintiff in a proposed class action lawsuit. She gave birth to twin girls just 2 weeks ago. She was expecting a normal, natural delivery at the Moncton City Hospital, but it didn't work out that way. The lawsuit alleges this woman, nurse Nicole Rouet, secretly added a labor-inducing drug into her IV bag. Within minutes, Scott says she experienced strong contractions that would not stop. Almost immediately, her baby's heart rates plummeted dangerously low. It led to an emergency cesarean section.
I didn't get to meet my girls right away. I was put unconscious, right? So it's supposed to be an exciting moment, and that was robbed.
Oxytocin is used to induce labor, but if used inappropriately, it can cause contractions that are too fast and too strong.
It could and does impact blood flow to the uterus, which could impact the baby.
The claim says Rouet was employed as a nurse in the Moncton area for 15 years. She has now been fired. Horizon Health, which operates the Moncton City Hospital, has alleged the nurse's actions forced 2 women to have emergency C-sections. The lawyers say they've heard from dozens of concerned mothers.
She's been involved in hundreds of labor and deliveries. So the potential class would be hundreds of people.
None of the allegations has been proven in court. The RCMP is investigating, but no charges have been laid. As for Horizon Health, it declined to comment today. Jade Scott and her lawyer want to know what the hospital knew and when. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Moncton.
Next, a Casablanca-themed prom for Sudbury's senior citizens. In our moment, the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
This is just the start of what could be accomplished between young adults and seniors. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for both sides?
A proposition that perhaps it is would be wise to use less inflammatory terms than bandits when you talk of a bunch of people who have the lives of 2 men in their hands.
You don't think they're bandits?
Well, regardless of what I don't think I'd be inclined to wave a red flag in their face if they held 2 of my friends or colleagues with guns at their heads.
Well, first of all, I didn't call them bandits. I call the people who were in jail now bandits, who had been tried before the law and condemned to a prison term. And I said that you people should stop calling them political prisoners. They're not political prisoners. They're outlaws. They're criminal prisoners. They're not political prisoners. And they're bandits. That's why they're in jail.
But with your army troops, you seem to be combating them as almost as though it is a war. And if it is a war, is anything that they say have validity?
Don't be silly. We're not combating them as a war, but we're using some of the army as peace agents in order that the police be more free to do their job as policemen and not spend their time guarding your friends against some form of kidnapping.
But you said earlier that that you protect them in this way, but you have said before that this kind of violence, what you're fighting here, the kind of violence of the FLQ, can lead to a police state.
Sure. Well, that's what you're complaining about, isn't it?
Well, yes, but surely that decision is yours, not the FLQ's.
Yeah, but I've asked you what your own logic is. It's to let them abduct anybody, not give any protection to anyone, call off the police. And that seems to be your position.
Not call off the police. Surely the police's job is to catch people who break the law.
Yeah, but not to give protection to those citizens who might be blackmailed for one reason or another.
Which must be half the population of the country in one way or another. I explain it badly, I think, but what you're talking about, to me, is choices. Yeah. And my choice is to live in a society that is free and democratic, which means that you don't have people with guns running around in it.
All right,
and one of the things I have to give up for that choice is the fact that people like you may be kidnapped.
Sure.
Sir, if you had to right now...
but this isn't my choice, obviously. You know, I think it's more important to get rid of those who are committing violence against the total society and those who are trying to run the government through a parallel power by establishing their authority by kidnapping and blackmail. And I think it's our duty as a government to protect government officials and important people in our society against being used as tools in this blackmail. No, you don't agree to this, but I'm sure that, once again, with hindsight, you would have probably found it preferable if Mr. Cross and Mr. Laporte had been protected from kidnapping, which they weren't, because the steps we're taking now weren't taken. But even with your hindsight, I don't see how you can deny that.
No, I still go back to the choice that you have to make in the kind of society that you live in.
Well, there's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed, but it's more important to keep law and order in this society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks of a soldier
at any
family.
cost? At any cost? How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that?
Well, just watch me.
At reducing civil liberties? To that extent?
To what extent?
Well, if you extend this and you say, okay, you're going to do anything to protect them, this include wiretapping, reducing other civil liberties in some ways?
Yes, I think the society must take every means at its disposal to defend itself against the emergence of a parallel power which defies the elected power in this country, and I think that goes to any distance. So long as there's a power in here which is challenging the elected representative of the people, I think that power must be stopped. And I think it's only, I repeat.
In Sudbury, Ontario today, the traditional senior prom was transformed into a seniors prom. It brought back vivid memories for one woman who still loves to get dressed up and dance. It was a big success, and not just because people had a good time, there's also something special about how it came together, and that's why it's our moment.
Dad approached our school about the idea, and we have a leadership class here, and I thought it was a great final project to do.
I think they were pretty excited because some of them showed up at 4 o'clock, just a tad early, because our event was starting at 5.
It brings back memories, let me tell you, big memories. Prom was a big deal. The boy came to the door. He met the parents. He brought the corsage. It was a huge deal. And there are an awful lot of people that never got that experience. The other thing was we had nuns, so you had to be 12 inches apart. There's no 12-inch rulers here tonight, so it should be a really good night. I used to be able to last 3 or 4 hours. I figure my feet should give out in about a half an hour. This is just the start of what could be accomplished between young adults and seniors. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for both sides?
Oh, I just feel so good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We need more of this in every community across Canada.
Well, I love Bev, and Bev spent a long time finding that dress, getting ready this afternoon. I feel like she and I could go shopping together. What a great idea.
And picture this, a really nice touch. They took a movie of the time that the people who were taking part in the prom would have probably been teenagers. Casablanca was silently projected on the walls. What the perfect mood setter that must have been for the evening.
Yeah, well, I mean, such a thoughtful thing on a few levels, right? And the kicker here is that it all really, really paid off because Bev, as Rosie was mentioning, she was super excited about it. She was joking that, you know, this event, I think it finished at 8:00 p.m. because seniors, you know, they wanted to go to bed. But Bev says that she could have stayed up all night long dancing, which sounds just about right. That's the National for this Thursday, April 11th. Good night.
Good night.